just looking for the refuge prayer.
Page 20. English is on the other side.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're just, there's not a whole lot of time, so I won't do a lot of this, but we should at least start with refuge and bodhicitta. So we can just read it. I'm on page 21. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I curate through listening to the Dharma, and I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. We can say practicing the Dharma. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I curate through practicing the Dharma, and I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I curate through listening to the Dharma, and become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So then you see that mantra right above there, Tayata Om Muni Mani Sawa. We'll recite that together. And as you recite that, as we chant it, it's Buddha's mantra. So for those that are new to it, it's a prayer to liberate your mind, I would say. You know, Muni Muni means controlling the mind. You know. So, at least I've been told that's what it means. I don't really know because I don't know Sanskrit. But anyway, chanting is a nice way to also meditate. So, because some people are more body-oriented and they like the breathing meditation, but some people work with their ears and like to listen, and some people are more visual. I think though, because all the teachers start with the breathing, I think it's pretty universal. But we can just chant the mantra, and I won't start right away. Let's just kind of go back to that sitting and breathing. And since we recited refuge, we can imagine that Buddha, the actual Buddha, is in the space in front of us. And as we breathe in, we're just breathing in a connection with him. We talked about lineage this morning, so making that connection with all the previous beings who realized emptiness, who realized Mahamudra. And as we breathing in, we're requesting to connect with them and to receive the blessing, receive the experience that they have. And one thing I like to do is when we breathe in, we feel that blessing coming in the form of light, white light or yellow light, and as we breathe out, we imagine that going out from our heart to all beings, so that we're connecting with all sentient beings, particularly our parents and our friends and everyone in this room. I'm wishing them also to have this connection with the external Buddha and the internal Buddha, which is your own enlightened state, which is there all the time. It's just covered up by all of our, they say in Buddhism, is our adventitious defilements. These delusions and things and thoughts about ourselves that we think exist, but actually they're just no more real than a mirage. So let's just sit for a moment and do that. Generating a longing wish to attain enlightenment for all sentient beings. Jaya Ta Om Mani Muni Mahamudra Soha. 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 Jaya Let me just take a moment to open our hearts to the Buddhas and the lineage lamas, and think about everything in this world that we're attached to, whether we own it or not, but all the wonderful things, whether we're attached to them or not, but all the things that bring us joy, to the ears, to the nose, to the mouth, tasting, touching, feeling, people, places, things, books, movies, songs, cars, restaurants, lovers, family. And knowing that this life is only one life of many, many, many. And the things of this life that we think are so important, the time of death, they'll just fade away. Never see them again. So let's just think about these things and put them on a big giant cloud and offer them up to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the sky. To bring them joy and to help us let go of all these things that seem so real, that we need so much. And then making a request that since we sincerely want to relieve all beings from the condition of cycling birth to birth and having a mind that's overwhelmed with grasping at this and that and karma's ripening and being completely out of control of our minds and our events and our lives. Wishing to free all beings from this predicament, we make the request to please help us to study the Dharma, make the Dharma our path, to clear away confusion on the path, and then most importantly, to be able to release delusions as they arise, to develop the skill, the awareness to notice as some kind of grasping mind of attachment or hatred or greed or pride or jealousy, anything that disturbs the mind, any disturbing mental factor, that may we have the capacity to recognize them as they arise. Just like recognizing the image in a mirror and knowing that it's just no different than an image in a mirror, recognizing it, penetrating it, and releasing it in its place. So that what's left is just this pure clarity, awareness, and bliss. To eliminate all our wrong views, and all the obstacles. Rinpoche talks a lot about now that the etymology of the word Buddha in Tibetan is Sangye. You know, we say Sangye Chodam. And not being a Tibetan person, being actually an uneducated person. I think Sang means to purify, and Gye means to gain all the realizations. It's either one way or another, but basically the name means having purified all the obstacles and gained all the realizations, the awareness, to dwell in this open-hearted, blissful, omniscient, present, pristine awareness that is the Buddha nature, our birthright that we're born with. Imagine as you're breathing and you're just breathing and all this white light goes throughout your whole body, purifying all that discursive, emotional meanness that covers up our Buddha nature. And it just, with our awareness, we penetrated into light, penetrated into oblivion, and are just left with clarity and awareness and love. It is our mind. It is our energy, even our body. Bless me to recognize before I become dull and fall asleep, dullness is coming. Please recognize that agitated energy that causes all these destructive thoughts. And please help me to relax. just completely relax, don't think about anything for a bit. And so I want to read you something. If I can find it. So first off, I thought, I haven't really even, for new people, what is Mahamudra? It just means the Great Seal. And the reason they call it the Great Seal is because it's emptiness. We've heard about emptiness, and it's kind of, I hesitate to use that because we have so many concepts about what that means. But we talked earlier about space, and how space underlies everything, and how when the scientists try to break down matter and find out what it is, they end up with just spaciousness, which is what Philip said. They think now it's just as perhaps consciousness, And so when we talk about emptiness is, I think Jeshinamda is going to explain it quite well next week, so I'll just barely touch on it a little bit. But in reality, when Buddhists talk about reality, they talk about the two truths. There's relative reality and ultimate reality. And relative reality it's actually not even what we see, because what we see is everything that appears to exist from its own side, things as they appear. But relative, we talk about dependent arising and emptiness. So the relative reality is all the conglomerations of all the things that form the basis of what we label our experience. And maybe I'll have to make a little sidestep here, because a lot of people think that what we see is relative reality. But actually, relative reality is what a Buddha would see. What we see and what we experience, Jeffrey Hopkins calls it truth for a jerk. Because what we experience appears to exist inherently. And the actual relative truth is the dependent arising aspect of emptiness. And so it's, when we talk about form, it's emptiness is form. It's the form aspect. But for our intents and purposes, it is what we see. We can call it, it's the relative world that we exist in. It's what karma, cause and effect moves through. That's how karma works. It's what, as karma ripens, what we experience is how we would think of it. And then the ultimate truth is the Mahamudra aspect of things. It's the emptiness that underlies everything. And so that's why it's called the Great Seal, because it's everywhere. It's just every single thing has as its ultimate nature emptiness. And when you understand that, then you're completely liberated, because what happens is because we don't understand emptiness, an appearance arises. And based on that appearance, which appears to be existing out there, there's a basis, and there's something that reflects back out to me, and then my mind goes, it's Charlotte, And I think we talked about it a little bit last night, because that's how mind works. If the mind is like a mirror, anytime something appears in that mirror, for us, just like now when we see in a mirror, it looks real. But the difference is, we know it's just a reflection in the mirror. Well, the Buddha knows that all this is just a manifestation of emptiness. That's why the mirror is such a good analogy. That things are just appearing in the mirror of our mind. And the reason we have such a difficult time with everything is because we think it's all real. And it's not just appearances, it's sounds, it's feelings, it's emotions, it's memories, it all appears to be real. So Mahamudra then is the practice of learning to realize emptiness, basically. And there's different ways of approaching it. I think in the debate courtyard, they do it through debate, so I shouldn't be knocking this. I don't mean to be saying all this intellectual stuff. I think there's a way to get there that way. It's definitely not my path, but it might be somebody's, might be those monks who do it all day long, because I think they do. It does something for their minds, But we don't get that opportunity, so I don't, it's better, I think, if we go through the more experiential way, which our dear teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, is telling us all the time, to meditate on emptiness. And the support for that is that don't believe everything that comes in your head, and don't blame other people for what happens to you, because you're creating that. We create our reality. These people that are around us and the things that happen to us are just the players in our movie. It doesn't mean they don't exist, and they're not, but they have their own movie, and their movie is as valid as my movie. And I think that's one thing we really need to understand to have harmony with people, is that there's always two sides of the story if you're having conflict with somebody, and their side is right as much as your side is right. So to try to get like I'm right is sort of silly. It's more to get down to why do we have a conflict, That's a whole other thing. So I just wanted to make sure we got to like this basic definition, at least get that far today. And of course, the 3 weeks I had with Kirti Sintra Rinpoche, it was all about that. So, and if you do like to study, I really recommend the Dalai Lama's book, the Gelukagi Mahamudra. It explains it all in very great detail. And it's a commentary on Panchen Losang Chokyi Gyaltsen's very thin book on Mahamudra. And that's at the back of that book. And basically, in our tradition, what happens is that, there's Tantra Mahamudra and there's Sutra Mahamudra. And in Sutra Mahamudra, we study. It's basically what we get all the time in our classes. It's like looking for the I. Where is the I? Because to understand emptiness, the easiest thing to understand is the emptiness of myself. That's the first place to go. And we can just start by, I think the best place to start is to begin, first you have to sit down and meditate and start recognizing what is I. Because right now we just take I for granted. I'm going here, I'm going there, I see this, I see that. But we never kind of turn around and flash the light and, well, what is I? But we feel it all the time, this thing, I, especially when strong emotions come. So the first place to start is learning to isolate that and recognize that and say, oh, this is the I. First you got to find the I. And it's the one, because we do have a relative I. It isn't that I doesn't exist. I does exist. It does, but it's constantly changing and arising with each new experience of subject and object. But it doesn't appear that way to us. It appears that because every moment to moment to moment there's a constantly arising I, just like they use the thing of when you take a firebrand and you go like that, it looks like there's a circle, but really there's just a dot, 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 dot of fire, right? So it's the same with thought. We're constantly experiencing stuff. So the I experiences, 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 and because we have memory, we can remember all the way back to however far. So it feels like there's a truly existent I that's gone through all these experiences. And so we want to be able to begin to isolate that instead of it just being the agent, like the unconscious agent that's living through life. And that's why one of the reasons we meditate is begin to recognize the subject and the object, and that subject, within that there's this sense of me, And so in our tradition, that's the first thing you do, is you recognize that I, And then after that becomes clear, then you can begin to investigate it. And what happens is, it's just like the scientists, once you investigate it, you can't find it anywhere. But it's still there, it still exists. That's the thing. That's the part that we don't get because we're so conceptual. How can something exist that I can't point to and say, this is it? But the thing is, when we get the experience of what it is that I can't point to and say, this is it, that's when the liberation comes. Because we're no longer grasping at the I. It's not the fact that I arises, it's the grasping at it that makes us think it exists that causes us the problem. And so in our meditations, as you begin, in the beginning, you know, you're just seeing all these thoughts and everything's coming and going, but the more you practice, the more the mind relaxes, there's that little gap between the thoughts. And that little gap will get bigger and bigger and bigger the more you learn to relax, until you can just sit down and sit there and maybe you're watching your breathing, but there's no thoughts coming and going. Especially if, I mean, the way I've learned is the way I'm sharing with you, you know, just kind of breathing in refuge and breathing out bodhicitta and a lot of love and all this, you know. It helps my mind to relax. And then there's just this spaciousness. And then within that, you begin to investigate the I. They use the term mindfulness fish, that you have this spacious ocean that you're experiencing once you have a calm mind. But with a little tiny part of your awareness, you're going to investigate who's experiencing the spaciousness, right? But the problem is in the beginning, when as soon as we begin to investigate, we become that, and we lose the space because we're starting to think, and then suddenly we've lost that ability to look at the I, because suddenly we are the I again, right? So that's why what they call shamatha, or calm abiding, is such an important practice across all Buddhists. You know, that's what mindfulness is. You know, that's what mindfulness training is. It's just learning shamatha. I think, I don't really know, but I think that's what it is. And I've never been to a mindfulness class. And so that's kind of, I'm just trying to give you the nuts and bolts, because Charles goes, well, what is this really, you know? So there are lots of different ways to practice shamatha, and I don't really want to go into that right now. You can read about it in lots of books, because I mean, maybe we will, but basically you just take an object and you learn, just keeping your mind focused back on that object. So you can have an external object, like a cup or a Buddha statue, constantly focusing back. You can have the deity, you know, myself is the deity. Most people think the most effective is the breath. And I think it's because, like I said last night, you're always breathing. So once and it calms you down to just be, I mean, that's what all the pranayamas and yogas and breathing, you know, everything, because once and we don't have time to do any of that either, but when Lou comes, she'll be teaching that. So you did that at the White Tower. So as you begin to slow down your breathing, you get more and more spaciousness in your mind. So the breath is a very important tool in learning to meditate. You know, whether you do it lying down or sitting up, but learning to do different just you know, breathing in 4 counts, holding 2 counts, breathing out 4 counts, holding 2 counts. Very simple pranayama. Or breathing in 4 counts, holding 4 counts, breathing out 4 counts, out 4 counts. These kind of very simple beginning meditations, which we might do, I'm not sure. They're very simple to do, but that's where we have to start. Because until we have some skill as a meditator, you know, we can think about these things, but we don't really get the one that rocks the grasping, you know. And of course, it's very helpful to pray and, like I said, purify and accumulate, you know, create. Because one thing that I'm quite certain about after my years in Dharma is I really believe in karma, that nothing comes without creating the cause. So if we want to realize emptiness, or we have to create the cause. So we create the cause by doing something that will make positive potential, we call virtue, because virtue is the karmas that lead towards positive results. So we have to dedicate that virtue to realizing emptiness. We have to just, you know, we don't want to, I mean, we can dedicate it towards having a wonderful Dharma center too. We can dedicate it towards getting a Rolls Royce. But the most effective, and so anytime you do any dedication, which we didn't do last night, if you meditate on emptiness at the time of the dedication, then you're constantly creating the cause for that virtue to go towards this realization of emptiness. And since many of us aren't very good at meditating, the best way to start creating virtue is, doing the things you do, healing, even being an engineer, if it's a positive thing, planting trees, fixing people's gardens, being SPCs, teaching mindfulness, but working with pediatrics, all these are virtuous things. But if we can remember in the evening to dedicate that towards realization, to calming my mind and making realizations, then there's no way that won't happen. But we have to remember to dedicate it in that direction, which meditation helps you to remember, because the biggest problem is we have to have enough awareness to remember what we're being aware of. If that makes any sense. So I think that's enough talking. So anybody have any questions about that? We have some idea what Mahamudra is?
Just gonna get a blanket. 'Cause I'm
Yeah,
cold.
yeah, get a blanket. So we have some kind of understanding? Yeah,
My question's about choice.
yeah.
With karma, is there ever any choice? Are we,
Definitely there's choice.
so we can choose to enhance our karma or create more
Definitely.
virtuous?
That's exactly what we're doing here. That's what all Dharma is about, is choosing to create positive karma. And the better you get at meditation and awareness, you can choose moment by moment. That's the whole point of it. I think I said last night, Michael Parrott told me a long time ago that the whole gist of Dharma is that we can't do anything about the past karmas that are going to ripen.
Mhm.
But what we can do is if we develop enough spaciousness in our mind that when those karmas do ripen, we can choose how we're going to react to them.
Okay.
And so rather than going back into our age-old habits of someone criticizes us, we get angry.
Mhm.
If we do enough shamatha meditation, which is what it takes, then when somebody criticizes us, we have that little gap. So instead of going, "Ruh!" there's this little gap that opens up and we can go, thank you. But it's not just an intellectual thing, because that's why you really have to work on the feeling in your heart, because it doesn't come from intellect. Our innate response to criticism is wrong. And so there's got to be something happening inside, deep in here. So that's why I feel these things like Tonglen meditation, what we just did, breathing in love, breathing out love, because we have to get into the habit of not thinking it's intellectual, but of feeling that spacious love. It has to become something visceral that we feel when we take refuge, when we do Tonglen, so that it becomes more of our everyday experience, not something that we do in the morning for 5 minutes and then forget about it. It has to be a transformative whole body experience, or else we're not going to be able to make that choice. Because as soon as somebody does something to us, or someone cuts in on us in the traveling, or someone irritates us, and we don't like change. As soon as some change comes along, we immediately react with our old habits. And then we don't have any choice. So if we want choice, that's why we meditate. Philip.
Can you not have an intellectual reaction, which may be an elementary form of this, but if you are able to come right to the fore with, this person is a sack of afflictions, just like everybody else, just like me, and that gives you some space?
Definitely. Definitely. It just is easier the other way around, but definitely. I mean, that's mostly all I have, But we whatever we can do, especially if we, this is why we do have all these prayers. I'm not knocking prayers. Prayers are great, I just think it shouldn't be only prayers, that's all. I mean,
the intellectual is the way in.
yes, the intellectual is the way in. So if you recite something every day, like His Holiness does, and like I don't always do, but say the 8.8 verses for training the mind. I'll always practice holding all the sentient beings more dear than a wish-granting jewel with the thought of feeling the great success. If you memorize that and think that, especially if you were to take one, for a week and remember it as much as you can, whenever someone treats me badly with abuse, insult, and so on, I'll accept the defeat, not for the victory to others. You know, if you memorize those things, then when somebody insults you, you have the imprint to offer the victory. You know, when someone, you know, when I see a being overwhelmed with heavy non-virtuous karma and suffering, you know, a wicked being, it says, you know, I'll hold him or her dear like uncovering a precious treasure. If you can remember that, you know, and but my problem is, and maybe you're different, you know, because I only know my experience, but you're a very bright man. Maybe that's enough for you, but for me, you know, when it actually comes to it, I'm an emotional person. You know, so I don't have enough intellect to deal with it, you know. Yeah.
It's the first stage, a way in. It would be great to have the emotional responses, but this is the business of faking it until you make it, isn't
Exactly, which is why we say the prayers over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And memorize them and work with them and
And I think that mind training is really interesting because they give you so many different thoughts, like all of these little verses and quotations. And I think the idea is you build up a huge kind of library of reactions. And in a way, it's a bit of both. You know, it's conditioning your mind in a way that's like meditation and making your mind familiar. But it's also like, instead of the usual, the habitual thought that comes, you have like a whole lot of alternative thoughts that you can put onto it, that you then see it differently. Kind of. So it's. I don't think there's a very hard and fast thing at all between the two.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. And also, it's really good to like know the long run really well.
Yeah.
And understand renunciation and bodhicitta and right view, because then you have a choice. You know, in this situation, how am I going to do with this situation? Because, you know, I might not respond perfectly in the moment, but I'm going to go away, and if it's a big issue, I'm going to have to work with that issue for quite some time. And so then I have all these different, I'm going to use renunciation, I'm going to use this has been my mother, I'm going to use this as impermanent, I'm going to use this as just karma ripening. And so we have all these different ones to keep applying to that situation, because in the beginning it's so hard to let go. Until we, you know, remembering the kindness. This person's been my kind mother so many times, you know, that eventually then it's no longer an issue. Because some of our issues are really big time. We might have to work on it for a year. Yeah, like, you know, abusive parents or abusive husband, or I lost my son, you know, in a car accident. You know, that one takes a long time to work on, you know.
Sure.
But they can be healed. You know, and using the intellect, using the heart, it's all good. So I think we, you know, whatever, you know, it's good to have, you're exactly right. Whatever you have, whatever tools you have, you know, you're going to bring your army into it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Anybody can interject any time. This is group time, you know. So.
I just wanted to, something that's come to mind is, I don't know if anybody's heard of rebirthing, but
Yes.
Working with the breath, you know, in a rebirthing session you breathe out of your mouth or out of your nose consistently for 45 minutes without a break. Whoa, that brings up a lot of stuff.
I think it's called holotropic breathing.
Yeah,
I think it's been changed the name or something. Rebirthing holotropic. It's really good therapy.
Amazing.
Yeah. So if you're having issues, you know, I have a friend who's a practitioner of that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of, you know, this is my fantasy for Jamyang, that there'll be stuff like that around to help people, you know,
I'll make the
practitioners.
notes.
Yeah. But anyway, what I would like to do, because this is Mahamudra, is I'd like to read you the classic Mahamudra teaching, if that's okay. And I'll read it slowly, and if you wanted me to stop anytime, it's not that long. But I don't know how many of you have heard of Naropa and Tilopa. And Tilopa was a great Mahasiddha in India in probably the 11th century, I guess. Or maybe the 10th century, I'm not sure, 11th century.
Bit of both.
Yeah, I think it's right around the between 900 and 1000, because Marpa and Milarepa were at the end of that 11th century. So Tilopa and Naropa must have been at the beginning of it.
Right.
And he received these teachings directly from Vajradhara, which meant he realized enlightenment, and this is what came to him out of the Dharmakaya, out of realizing Buddha's mind.
Could you just speak up a little if you can?
Yeah, okay,
Thank
sorry,
you.
yeah,
It's okay.
sorry about that. And so, and then the story of Naropa is, and I'll just make it real short, but if you want to read his biography, there is an English translation of his biography that's really great. I think it's part of the Shambhala books. And he went through these trials because, first of all, he was a great pandit. He was like the king of intellect of Nalanda Monastery, which is this giant city of monks. I don't know how many, 10,000 monks in that? I don't know how many were there. And Bihar, near Bodh Gaya, you can go to see the ruins of it now. Thanks to Queen Victoria, it got dug up. And so he was like the biggest debater, the best. He would debate all the people that came, and he just thought he was the bee's knees, you know. He was like the guy. And one day, I can't remember if it was in a dream or if a vision. I think it was a vision. This old hag came to him and he said, and it was, you know, this old woman, you know, came to him.
I thought it was actually kind of in waking reality that it happened.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't waking me up. I have a feeling it was kind of one, like a...
No, I think she appeared, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I shouldn't use the word hag. A nice old crumb. Seeing as that that's kind of me now. Came into his room, and maybe David remembers it better than me, but she said, Naropa, do you know everything, don't you? And he says, yes, I know all the Buddhist texts. And she said, well, do you know the meaning of all these texts? And he said, yes, I know the meaning of all the texts. And she started to cry. And she says, Naropa, you really don't get it. You know? And so, I can't remember all that happened, but eventually she told him that if he really wanted to understand and get Buddhism, get the heart of the Dharma, that he had to go find Tilopa. And Tilopa lived on the Ganges, further south of where they were. And so he wandered around for a long time looking for Tilopa. And finally somebody said, you mean Tilo? This old fisherman? And so Tilopa was down by the river catching fish and eating them raw. And he said, how could this be this great teacher who's going to do all these things? And Tilopa, I don't know if he was eating them raw, but he was I think he was. And then Tilopa did something like he snapped his fingers and all the fish came back to life and went back in the sea, in the river. And so then he realized that this is where he's going to learn about Mahamudra. And so he spent, I think, 12 years with him, doing all kinds of stuff that Tilopa was getting him to do to try to shake him out of his conceptual framework. Like heavy-duty things, like jumping off cliffs. And
He steal a bride.
yeah, and stealing a bride. And well, actually, he didn't steal her. You know, you know what Indian weddings are like? You know, they have these processions where what are the things they carry the bride and groom inside a little carriage, and they're carrying on their back. Panoply or something like that. Anyway,
Yeah.
and so Tilopa had to jump in it and kiss the woman, And of course they beat him to a pulp, and each time Tilopa would get beaten up and destroyed.
Naropa.
Naropa, and then Tilopa would come along and say, Naropa, what happened to you? And he would say, look into the mirror of your mind. And then he would snap his fingers and Tilopa was better. And so in the end, I told you last night, finally he banged him on the head with the sandal at one point, and he got it. And so, but anyway, read the book. It's a really good book. It's not very long. And so what I'm about to read to you is Tilopa's teaching to Naropa. And I first read it a long time ago, and it was what inspired me to really want to practice Dharma. I was just so inspired by this. This is a different translation. This is a translation from Trungpa Rinpoche, and it's not his translation, it's by his translator. I'll say it again, Sultram Gyamso. It's not the same one that's the teacher, but I don't know if he's a Tibetan or a Westerner or what, and Trungpa Rinpoche is probably one of the foremost, if not the foremost Kagyu Lama today. He's an old man now, he's like in his mid-80s. He doesn't travel as much as he used to. But he's like the Karmapa's main teacher, the 16th Karmapa, the one that the Dalai Lama recognized, the one that lives in Dharamsala. And he has a lot of books on Mahamudra, because that's what they do. And anyway, so I'm going to read this to you, okay? So we have to really have a strong motivation. And you can just go to rinpoche.com, that's his website, and download this. And also, there's a 76-page commentary on it there. So that's another thing, if you're interested in Mahamudra, you might want to read it, because he explains verse by verse what they mean. And there's 7 different stages of Mahamudra, and they're all within here. But this is just a Saturday afternoon, so I'm just going to read it. If we had a week, maybe we'd go into it. Anyway, so it goes like this. Okay, so for the sake and benefit of all sentient beings who attain enlightenment, for all sentient beings, we're going to listen to Mahamudra. And I actually received this transmission from Trungpa Rinpoche. So that was a really cool fluke. I didn't even ask for it, but it happened one day. So it goes like this. Although Mahamudra cannot be taught, intelligent and patient Naropa, can you hear me? Yeah. Intelligent and patient Naropa, tolerant of suffering, who is engaged in austerity and is devoted to the Guru, fortunate one, do this with your mind. For example, in space, what is resting on what? In one's mind, Mahamudra, there is nothing to be shown. Rest relaxed in the natural state without attempting to alter anything. So that's why when we sit, we just watch. We're not trying, I'm talking to myself, we're not trying to follow our thoughts, we're not trying to accept or reject, we just want to let everything just be as it is. And as space rests on nothing, mind also rests on nothing. For example, it is like looking in the middle of the sky and not seeing anything. In the same way, when your mind looks at your mind, thoughts stop and you attain unsurpassable awakening. If this fetter or bondage of thought is loosened, there is no doubt you will be liberated. For example, just as the vapor that arising from the earth becomes clouds and dissolves into the expanse of space, not going anywhere and yet not continuing to abide anywhere, in the same way the agitation of the thoughts that arise from the mind and within the mind is calmed the instant you see the mind's nature. So one of the things we do in Mahamudra practice is you get a little more familiar with meditation. When a thought arises, this is what Lama Yeshe would teach, you just look at the nature of that thought. There's a quality of awareness that goes right into that thought, and you just watch that thought go psh, just like watching a cloud disperse. So rather than kind of following the storyline, you just look right into the center of it, and then you're left with mind, just mind. And that thought becomes clarity. All there is clarity. Okay, now the next one. For example, just as the nature of space transcends color and shape, and just as space is therefore unaffected or unchanged or unobscured by the various colors and shapes that occur within it, in the same way the essence of your mind transcends color and shape, and therefore is never obscured or affected by the various colors and shapes of virtue and wrongdoing. So everything that we experience is being related to shapes and colors. And one of the ways you do Mahamudra meditation is looking at mind and trying to see if it does have a shape or if it does have a color. Trying to find mind. Where's my mind? And you keep looking, and nothing. For example, it is like the luminous heart of the sun, which could never be obscured, even by the darkness of 1,000 eons. In that way, the luminous clarity that is the essence of the mind is never obscured by the samsara of beginningless time, of innumerable kalpas, of innumerable eons. So in other words, the clarity of mind, in essence, is never obscured by all these thoughts and feelings that are coming and going. And we just have to have faith and know that. For example, just as we apply the term empty to space, in fact, there's nothing within space that we are accurately describing by that term. Does that make sense? In the same way, although we call the mind clear light or luminosity, simply calling it so does not make it true that there is actually anything within the mind that is a true basis for that designation. In that way, the nature of mind has from the beginning been like space, and there are no dharmas, in that word no phenomena, that are not included within that. Abandoning all physical actions, the practitioner should rest at ease. I remember the translation, I remember from the first one. I think it was the first English one. It said, "Do not with the mind but relax. Shut firm the mouth and silent remain." I remember that. But here it's, abandon all physical actions, the practitioner should rest at ease. You know, a little more modern. Oh, here it is. Without any verbal utterance, your speech becomes like an echo, sound inseparable from emptiness. Think of nothing whatsoever with the mind, and look at the dharmas of the leap. I think that means looking at the gap. The body is without meaning, empty like a bamboo stalk. The mind is like the midst of space. It is inconceivable. Rest, relaxed within that, without letting it go or placing it. Rest relaxed in that state, without sending it out or placing it in, letting it go or attempting to place it. If mind has no direction, it is Mahamudra. With this you will attain unsurpassable awakening. Those who follow Tantra and the vehicle of the Paramitas, the Sutras, and the Vinaya, and the various teachings of the Buddha, with an attachment for their individual textual traditions and their individual philosophy, will not come to see luminous Mahamudra. Because seeing of that luminosity or clear light is obscured by their intention and attitude. So you can't get there by study. I think you get closer, but eventually you just have to abandon it, because it's beyond concept. The conceptualized maintenance of vows actually causes you to impair the meaning of samaya. Without mental directness or mental activity, be free of all intentionality. Thoughts are self-arisen and self-pacified, like designs on the surface of water. If you do not pass beyond the meaning, which is not abiding and not conceptualizing or focusing, then through not passing beyond that, you do not pass beyond or transgress samaya. This is the torch, which dispels all obscurity or darkness. If free of all intention, you do not abide in extremes, you will see without exception the meaning of all the Buddhist teachings, or of all the takas, I don't know what that is, the sections of the Buddhist teachings. If you rest in this, you will be liberated from the prison of samsara. If you rest evenly within this, all your wrongdoings and obscurations will be burned. This is called, for those reasons, the torch of the doctrine. Foolish people who have no interest in this will only be continually carried off by the river of samsara. Those foolish people experiencing intolerable sufferings in lower states of existence are worthy of compassion. Wishing to attain liberation from intolerable suffering, rely upon a wise guru. When the guru's blessings enter your heart, your mind will be liberated. Kyeho. These things of samsara are meaningless or pointless, the causes of suffering. And since all of these things that have been done or made are pointless, look at that which is meaningful. If you are beyond all grasping at an object, and grasping at a subject, that is the monarch of all views. If there is no distraction, that is the monarch of all meditations. If there is no effort, that is the monarch of all conducts. When there is no hope and no fear, that is the final result, and the fruition has been attained or revealed. It is beyond being an object of conceptual focus, and the mind's nature is lucidity. That means, it's the part of the mirror that reflects lucidity, It has the capacity to reflect what we apprehend. There is no path to be traversed, and yet in that way, when you enter the path to Buddhahood, there is no object of meditation. But if you become accustomed to this, you will attain unsurpassed awakening. Thoroughly examine mundane things, or the things of the world. If you do, you will see that none of them persist. None of them are capable of permanence, and in that sense, they are all like dreams and magical illusions. Dreams and magical illusions are meaningless. Therefore, generate renunciation and give up mundane concerns. Cut through the bonds of attachment and aversion towards those around you and your surroundings, and meditate in isolated retreats, forests, and so forth, living alone. Remain in that state without meditation. When you attain that which is without attainment, you have attained Mahamudra. For example, if the single root of a tree with a trunk has many branches, leaves, flowers, and fruit is cut, the 10,000 or 100,000 branches will automatically die. In the same way, if the root of mind is cut through, the branches and leaves of samsara will dry up. For example, just as the darkness that has accumulated over 1,000 eons is dispelled by the illumination of one lamp or one torch, in the same way, one instant of the wisdom of the clear light of one's mind dispels all ignorance, wrongdoing, and obscurations accumulated throughout numerous eons. The intellect cannot see that which is beyond conceptual mind, and you will never realize that which is uncreated through created dharmas. If you wish to attain or realize that which is beyond intellect and is uncreated, then scrutinize your mind and strip awareness naked. Allow the cloudy water of thought to clarify itself or to clear itself. Do not attempt to stop or create appearances, just leave them as they are. If you are without acceptance and rejection of external appearances, all that appears and exists will be liberated. The all-basis is unborn. That's the all-base mind. And within that unborn all-basis, abandon or relinquish habits, wrongdoing, and obscurations. Therefore, do not fixate or reckon. Rest in the essence of the unborn or in the unborn nature. In that state, appearances are fully apparent, but within that experience of vivid appearances, allow concepts to be exhausted or to dissolve. Complete liberation from all conceptual extremes is the supreme monarch of views. Boundless vastness is the supreme monarch of meditations. Being directionless and utterly impartial is the supreme monarch of conduct. Self-liberation beyond expectation or hope is the supreme result of fruition. For a beginner, the mind is like a river with a fast current running through a narrow bed or a narrow defile. In the middle, or after that, the mind becomes like a gentle current of the river Ganges, and in the end, it is like the flowing of all rivers into the mother ocean, or it is like the meeting of mother and child of all rivers. For those of little intelligence, if they cannot remain in that state, may apply or hold the technique of the breathing and emphasize the essence of awareness, and through many techniques or branches, such as gaze and holding the mind, tighten awareness until it stays put, exerting tension or effort until awareness comes to rest in that state or in its nature. If you rely upon Karma Mudra, the wisdom of bliss and emptiness will arise. Enter into union, having consecrated the upaya or method and the prajna or knowledge. Slowly let it fall or send it down, coil it, turn it back, and lead it to its proper place. Finally, spread it or cause it to pervade. This is talking about Tantra. Finally, spread it or cause it to pervade your whole body. If there is no attachment or craving, the wisdom of bliss and emptiness will appear. You will possess longevity without white hair, and you will be as healthy as the waxing moon. Your complexion will be lustrous, and you will be as powerful as a lion. You will quickly attain the common cities or attainments, and you will come to a light in or attain the supreme city as well. These instructions of the essential point of Mahamudra, may they abide in the hearts of worthy or fortunate beings. So I'll just read the little colophon. It says, this was bestowed on the banks of the river Ganges by the great and glorious Siddhartha, who had realized Mahamudra, upon the Kashmiri Pandit, who was both learned and realized, Naropa, after Naropa had engaged in 12 hardships or austerity. This was translated and written down at Pulahari in the north by the great Naropa and the great translator, the king among translators, Marpa Chokilodro. And it was translated into English orally by Lama Yeshe Gyamtso in the course of translating the very venerable Khenchen Trungpa Rinpoche's commentary. So that's just a little seed that gets planted in your mind about Mahamudra. So I think since we read that, if you don't mind, let's just sit for 10 minutes and we'll have a break, okay? Is that all right? And if you got anything from that, you can sit with that. then we can relax. It's good to have short sessions. So, just like take a little break and then we'll come back. We don't have much more to go, but let's take a 15-minute break or so, and then I think it might be nice to do some Tonglen meditation. Work on the heart of it. And if I could just say one thing before we go, because I'll forget otherwise, which is that, you know, all this talk about going beyond concept and not doing anything with your mind, and we don't want to end up with a Hashang view. You know, you hear about that all the time. You know, this view. And the Dalai Lama says very clearly, because that book out there, I was there at that teaching for the Gelug Kagi Mahamudra, and in there he says, you can't go to no concept until you have the right concept. So it is important to study and understand what we're looking for before we just go, oh, everything's empty, because then we'll just end up in some, you know, conceptual blankness that doesn't really do anybody any good, and it's not emptiness, you know. So it is good to read that book and study and like that. So, but in the end, ultimately, you know, this is after Naropa's like the king of intellect, you know. Ultimately, you have to penetrate through all that and just let it go, you know. So I just want to make sure you don't think that we just go back and don't, you know, just have a blank mind. I get in trouble. Yeah, Philip.
I have one question that may or may not be relevant. Whilst you were reading, I had recalled a sentence that I've read recently
Yeah.
in a Guy Newland book. And,
Oh, yeah.
a couple of sentences, but the main one is that the object to be negated is that, or the thing to be negated is that objects have their own way of existing without being posited through the force of consciousness.
Exactly.
And Mahamudra appears to be getting to the heart of that negation.
Precisely.
That is it, is it? And
That's
so you're-
precisely it. Yes.
Okay. So you're looking at thoughts and evaporating them, or whatever.
Yeah.
You're looking to see that they have no substance.
Yeah.
That everything, you can only perceive what you perceive, and
Mhm.
you're saying that these perceptions
Mm-hmm.
ultimately have no substance.
Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of the first step, you see, because at least this is how I understand it, and is that once we get looking at thoughts and seeing that thoughts are arising and they have no inherent substance of their own, then we come to what we would call the relative nature of mind. We get to this sense of this ability to concentrate without having thoughts in the way, you know. And then we can look at the I, that you said in much better language, you know, the imputed by consciousness. You know, then you can begin to investigate. Not only are thoughts imputed by you know, my thoughts are not real, but most importantly is this one that's experiencing it. So Mahamudra begins with finding the object to be refuted, that is the main referent object, me. And so penetrating through that one that appears to exist from its own side is emptiness of self. That's what we're looking for. And I don't know, then they say after that, once you realize that the I doesn't exist from its own side, everything else, first, next, other, self and other, they say, you know, if you read Nagarjuna, it's about self and other. The other is first the body, you know, the mind. You know, everything then that the I perceives is also empty. The mind is empty, the body is empty, the house is empty. So the first step, the reason why we're doing the shamatha and watching the thoughts coming and going and everything, is so that we can have a mind that's undistractedly able to work on the object to be refuted. Does that make sense?
Just about. I'm getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. And along the way, that helps because, you know, if thoughts are just coming and going, feelings are just coming and going, and so then it's already loosening our grasping by recognizing that thoughts just come and go. It's already beginning to break up the sense that things are truly existent because we watch them come and go. And before then, we just we didn't even think about that. You know, a thought, a feeling came, and we were right about it, you know. Which just causes all the disharmony in the political world, you know, I'm right. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but you got it right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so what it is, kind of like meditation in the beginning, is just learning the instrument that we're going to play. You know, it's like, I used to think of it as like, you know, we're a painter, but we don't really have a hold of our paintbrush and our paints, because it's just this mishmash of thoughts coming and going. And so the thing about shamatha is just beginning to identify what is awareness, what is clarity, what is mind. And then once we start to beginning to like understand how, you know, what is the function of mind, what is mind, you know, how does it work, then we begin to work with the concepts of emptiness and inherent existence and stuff like that. I mean, we do it, I mean, it all goes together, you know, and then we have to have renunciation, bodhicitta, I mean, we have to do it all at once, you know, it's not, you know, but this is sort of the ultimate aim, is to just crack that me, that because like Talopa said, I mean, you so many things in here you've heard in other Buddhist teachings, but this is the original. Well, Buddha was the original source, but because he said that thing about, you know, once you cut the root of the tree's dead. So if the root of all of our suffering is the fact that we think I'm truly existent, you cut that one, then everything else is going to be gone. Rather than trying to work at the end, you know, anger comes, oh, I need to be patient. Attachment comes, I need to have aversion. You know, that's like working way out into the branches. You know, and of course, until we have a sharp axe, we need to work there too. But what shamatha meditation is, and watching the breath, is just sharpening that axe, so one day we're going to cut the tree at the root. Does that make sense? So it's just like David was saying, we need all the tools, you know. And what maybe, I still want to work on this, but we'll do tomorrow. And I think the very first tool for Western people is learning to be at home in your own mind. So dissolving the tension and all that. So tomorrow morning we'll do that. We didn't get to it today, but it's all right. Okay, so let's take a break.